making there? A giant bunny? Easter ended months ago.
Cobb, you goon, this is a horse.
A horse? Cooper, why are you horsing around? Oh, no. I know where this is going. Not another one of your stupid schemes.
Cobb, calm down. It ain't like that.
It's always like that, especially when old Chrissy Nolan comes out with a new film.
New cinematic adventure means. But don't worry, Cobb. This scheme is gonna work this time.
Oh, great. What is it now?
Well, you know how the Odyssey in IMAX has been sold out and we haven't been able to get any tickets?
We had tickets, Coop. We bought them months ago, but then you got hammered at the Outback Steakhouse the night before because you were so excited and I couldn't find you.
Yeah, that was its own Odyssey. Those dollar Jamaican cowboys are the devil. But listen, Cobb, I've got an idea for us to see the Odyssey in IMAX for free.
Cooper, I'm not going to jail again for you.
Then listen up and follow my directions closely. We're going to take this horse all the way to AMC Kansas City.
But Cooper, aren't we based in California or something?
Don't matter. We'll get inside, wait a few days, then the ushers will take us into the movie.
Cooper, you idiot. Why would they put a wooden horse in the theater?
That's the best part. I'm going to put a note on the horse that says it's a gift from old Christopher the Funk Master Nolan himself. They won't have any choice but to honor him with a special seat just for the horse.
Cooper, of all the stupidest schemes of yours, this has gotta be the stupidest. Let's do it.
Cobb, quit shoving me in here. There's enough room for you to pee in the leg.
Cooper, I don't get it. Why didn't we just get inside this thing right before they open? It's midnight.
'Cause they have to accept it first. It's a gift, not an insurrection.
Cooper, I'm lightheaded. I'm losing track of time. It feels like it's been 20 years. Are you sure this is the right theater?
Course I'm sure. It's the AMC Kansas City, the most happening AMC this side of the Golden Arches.
Arches? That's Missouri, Cooper. No, you didn't put us in front of the AMC Kansas City in Missouri, did ya?
I guess it's possible. They're so close together.
No, they ain't, Cooper, you idiot. This AMC is closed down. Nobody's coming. I'm out of here. No.
Hi, welcome to McDonald's. I'll have the double quarter pounder with cheese, please. Oh, sorry, around here we call that the Royale with cheese. No, you don't. Doesn't matter. Anything else?
And a kid's meal for me. There better be a toy in there. What's going on over here? Why are there two Americans who smell like poop?
And pee. Oh, hey, Javier. These are my new friends, Cobb and Cooper.
Huh? How do you know our names?
Cobb, you hungry idiot. I put it on the note. Oh, also a kid's menu for me too, please.
In a world that's on fire, thank God for movies. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, co-founder and editor at In Between Drafts, and from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he is a film writer over at CBR. It's Will Ashton.
What up?
Today, we're going to be talking about The Odyssey, new film by Chris Nolan. Apparently the biggest film of, I guess, the year. I mean, I did, that in Toy Story, I guess. Wow. Who would have thought that a Christopher Nolan movie would be popular?
This fella right here, that's who.
You can find more episodes of Thank God for Movies, including our full archive on thankgodformovies.com, including written reviews and other fun features. And of course, if you enjoy what we do, please consider leaving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out, and we very much appreciate it. All right, well, The Odyssey came out last weekend, and I am super curious how we're going to come out of this thing, because you know plenty of what I think of The Odyssey. I've written a lot of stuff about it lately. First thing I want to bring up is kind of the way this has kind of just been a phenomenon. I mean, it not just making a lot of money, but it is everywhere, right? And so a lot of people have been talking about how this movie just feels like a shift, right? Like if Obsession and Backrooms were the two kind of like original indie films that were not the big kind of like big studio slop CGI stuff, and they were making way more money than anyone expected, Odyssey feels like it's pushing that even more forward because, I mean, look at this compared to the live action Moana, which you and I obviously skipped. Supergirl, which you skipped. I feel like something's in the air. Am I overstating it?
Well, I mean, I think the big thing for this one is that it really cements Christopher Nolan as a marquee director, if he wasn't already. I feel like this was his blank check project after he won Best Picture for Oppenheimer, and he could basically do anything he wanted. He made this film. This is something he's been very, passionate about for a long time. Now he's basically at that, prime Spielberg, Kubrick, whatever level where it's just like anything he wants to make, he's basically got carte blanche to do it because he's guaranteed pretty much without a shadow of a doubt that his name will guarantee some sort of box office success. For a film that has this many, marquee or famous stars in it, the star of the film really is Christopher Nolan. And that kind of just was what this movie, I feel like its success is really implementing.
I mean, I guess I agree with that. I think the thing I'm kind of curious about with Nolan, looking back at his filmography, he didn't have any obvious misses in terms that couldn't be rationalized away. I think Interstellar was a bit more divisive than people thought, but it still made money. It was still a popular movie. I didn't really like it, but it was not a failure by any stretch. Dunkirk, conversely, just felt like, okay, lower stakes movie, did well, wasn't a huge deal. That was the first movie you and I ever review together from him. And then Tenet was I just feel like that was an anomaly. And you couldn't really judge the guy too much because it was such a COVID movie. It was obviously his most divisive movie. I think a lot of people just found it to be a bit of a chore. And I don't know, have you ever revisited Tenet though? I'm kind of curious. I was thinking about rewatching it.
Not the whole thing. I've revisited parts of it. I think my estimation of it has kind of grown in the sense that I think it's become more apparent as I get a little bit more well-versed in the Michael Mann filmography, how much that is, even more so than maybe Dark Knight, which is pretty much a one-to-one The Heat. Very much a Michael Mann kind of film done the Christopher Nolan style. And it's more about the vibes than the story, even though people get caught up in the nitty-gritty of the story. And much like Inception, it's one of those films where it's like the whole film is just characters explaining what's happening. And it can still feel kind of polarizing and alienating and convoluted. But yeah, I feel like I've kind of grown on that one in particular. But what I mean, though, is I don't know. I just feel like, a lot of people like Dunkirk. I feel like that was the first one that got actual Oscar consideration after, years of people championing his films and being like The Dark Knight should have gotten more Oscar consideration. A lot of people think Interstellar should have gotten more Oscar consideration. Yeah, I just feel like Tenet was the one film that was kind of a bump. People, like you said, had kind of mixed feelings about it. Came out at a time when a lot of people weren't comfortable going to the theaters. It felt like stock in Christopher Nolan was going down potentially a peg. And something like Oppenheimer, it is more of a historical drama. It's something that, is something that can definitely appeal to an older crowd, but no one expected it to be the box office kind of juggernaut that it was. But a lot of people would associate it with oh, that was Barbenheimer, it was riding the coattails of Barbie and stuff like that. And now you get the Odyssey, which is its own event outside of any outside sources, outside of any asterisks or anything you want to put on it to be well, this or that. It's clearly people want to see this movie because it's Christopher Nolan doing a big, huge IMAX friendly film that it feels like a big theatrical event. It feels like something you need to see in a theater. And maybe it is amplified by people, going to see the Odyssey, Obsession and Backrooms and Toy Story 5 and these other films and, rejuvenated in their love of theater or whatever. But I feel like it does kind of feel like the film that really cements Nolan as a true marquee idol filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just funny that it was ever in contention, right? He has so many fans that will show up for him no matter what, like you're alluding to. One thing that I think is interesting in the stuff surrounding this movie was the prediction that it was going to flop because there was just there's a whole right-wing, far-right reactionary ecosystem of, I don't want to call them media critics, they're just basically influencers who kind of make their hay on outrage, of this movie sucks because a black person is inside of it, right? Everything to them is woke, which just means minorities are being cast in movies over white people. So just a lot of racist idiots. And a lot of people were kind of throwing that at this movie and saying it was going to fail and people weren't going to show up for it. That ended up not being the case at all. I mean, people showed up in droves for this movie. I wrote an essay about this for In Between Drafts. It's called The Real Woke Politics of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And it was kind of about how it's just ironic, this movie was so successful kind of as a movie that is the kind of more classic definition of woke because it's actually sort of about things relating to like civilization collapse and how we treat immigrants and things like that. A little bit more of like a side discussion there. But in terms of the box office, we're recording this the Saturday after its opening weekend. It's already made at this point $389 million worldwide off of a $250 million budget. I mean, the numbers are insane. It's having a strong second weekend. We knew it would because the pre-sales, for this thing have been very, very strong. Like it's still really hard to find tickets for IMAX to see this. So yeah, were you expecting this to be as big of a box office success as it was? I mean, even before, I'm sure you knew in the past few weeks because of the pre-sales, but like maybe like earlier in this year when we didn't have that full picture yet.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised that people were down on it. When I did my little just for fun individual summer movie wager, I put it number 2 behind Toy Story 5 as far as what I thought would be the highest grossing of the year. And obviously the summer has panned out in ways I didn't anticipate, like Supergirl I thought was going to do more money than it did. I didn't at all expect Obsession to be the juggernaut that it was, and I had forgotten about Backrooms, and I'm kicking myself for that one because I feel like the writing was kind of on the wall for that one. I just wasn't thinking about it or properly paying attention to it. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like the Odyssey, I kind of base my estimation on that stuff as far as like what organic word of mouth is coming out. Like, I feel like the whole woke thing was, by and large, I mean, I feel like a lot of it was probably driven by bots and all these sort of, people trying to make this conversation happen in an inorganic sort of way. Maybe it did start to happen organically because of that, but I just kind of felt like it never really felt that sincere to me. And that's basically what you're implying. Like, it just didn't really feel like it was something that people were actually outraged about. They just saw the trailer and saw the people of color in the movie, I guess. So they were just like, this isn't, the Odyssey, even though, this is a tale of Greek gods and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure none of the cast are Greek, but I'm not seeing anyone complain about that.
It's just a way to make money by complaining on the internet.
Yeah,
that's
they're
why.
grifters.
Yeah. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at the box office since you brought it up and kind of see how it's shaped up. It is pretty wild to see, right? So like just looking at the domestic box office as of today, we're recording this July 25th. Right now, as you mentioned, Toy Story 5 is number 1 domestically, $438 million. Huge success for Pixar. I mean, that's really, really strong for them. I mean, they typically do around this number for their like legacy sequels, but I do think that there was a concern that it wasn't going to be like an Inside Out 2 or a Finding Dory because it's the 5th Toy Story, right? So like, where are those diminishing returns? I don't see them. I'd have to compare it to Toy Story 4 at this point in its run, but I do think Toy Story 5 has kind of benefited a lot from the fact that this summer hasn't been as super competitive. Like in its hay of June, it didn't really have to compete with Supergirl as much as people expected. And even Minions and Monsters, I don't think really made like much of a splash. I think Illumination struggled to market that thing because that right now is at number 7 in its, I think, third week actually. Yeah, right? I forget exactly.
Yeah, I think Minions and Monsters have been out for like about a month now, I believe.
A month? Oh, I didn't think it'd be that long, but yeah.
Is it? Maybe it's less. I don't know. I thought it was about a month now.
I think Toy Story has been a month. Actually, I think more than a month, because it's July 25th. So I don't know. I'd have to look at it. But anyway, the point is, Toy Story 5 clearly is the big winner of the summer so far. Obsession, which like you mentioned, like nobody saw that coming. $259 million domestically. It's unbelievable. Devil Wears Prada 2 is currently number 3 at $220 million. That's another one where I'll be honest, like I didn't think that was going to make 200. I would have guessed like around 100 million domestically for Devil Wears Prada.
No, I thought that one was going to be big. If anything,
the reason I was down on it is because I was like, oh, I feel like it felt like it had the energy of like a TV movie and not a real sequel. And that's part of it is because I didn't really see a lot of the marketing. And so I didn't really think that it was going to be a big hype thing, but it was.
No, it was. I mean, if anything, I'm just kind of surprised that it's held out as long as it had. I thought it would have dropped closer to, maybe like 5 or 6 at this point with Minions and Monsters and
right.
Maybe even Moana or something kind of tipping its hand a little bit. I think when Spider-Man comes out, it'll dip a little bit more. It'll probably end up closer to like 4 or 5, which is what I expected for the summer. But yeah, I mean, it's held out. I think there was anticipation for it. It just seems like most of the time, like I think part of the reason why the new Minions movie, even though it's easily the best and most critically acclaimed of these Minion movies, let alone the Despicable Me movies, it's oversaturation. And I feel like something, even though everyone knows to some degree the story of the Odyssey, it's like, well, I haven't seen Christopher Nolan's take on it. And also, we haven't had a Greek epic for the theater like this in a while. And, like Toy Story, you can say, it's like we've gotten 5 of them now, but it's not like every day you get, or every year you get a Toy Story movie in a way that you feels like every couple of years you get a Minions movie or something. So yeah, it seemed like Devil Wears Prada 2 was like, I don't know, people underestimate a lot of the movies marketed primarily towards women, I feel like, but in general, it just seemed like there was a lot of genuine hype for that one in a way that a lot of these other films didn't. Like Moana, it didn't seem like anyone I knew was genuinely excited for it. Like it just was like, okay, I might see that. But like no one was like, what are they going to do with that material with The Rock and real life as opposed to animated? It's just like, it just seemed like it was very obligatory and for the Disney shareholders and all that stuff. And yeah, I think you can kind of get a sense of when people are actually interested in things and when they just feel like something's to see because it's obligation at best. And yeah, I just felt like the Odyssey had genuine interest, and a lot of that I felt like was driven by Nolan at this point.
Well, Odyssey, it's at number 4 right now and climbing. Obviously, it's gonna get past Devil Wears Prada 2 and Obsession, so it'll at least be number 2. It has 199 million domestically so far. I think I would bet on it surpassing Toy Story 5 at this point. The big question mark is how Spider-Man is going to hit, right? If that thing is huge, as big as people are expecting, that might take some of the steam out of the Odyssey. But it's tough because the Odyssey also benefits a lot from the high ticket prices. The IMAX screenings, like people are willing to see this in IMAX in a way that not as many people were willing to see Toy Story 5. But then Toy Story 5's advantage, of course, is it's the 4-quadrant family movie. It's not nearly it's like under 2 hours. It has like that kind of velocity.
Well, also, Toy Story is the type of film where it's like it draws everyone,
That's what I meant by 4-quadrant.
But what I mean though is like even adults who don't have kids are going to go see it in a way that they're not likely to see
That's
Minions.
Still 4-quadrant.
Sure. But yeah, you are correct. Odyssey is a hard R-rated, film. Obviously, it limits the audience to a degree, but not enough to hurt its box office.
Right, yeah. It did slip past Backrooms, which is at number 5 right now at 196 domestically, which, yeah, is just incredible. Like, this is a movie that I thought at best would maybe make like 70 to 80 million. But yeah, like you, I just totally did not see it coming that the internet Gen Z crowd was going to show up for it. And the idea of like Backrooms doing better than Star Wars, The Mandalorian, Grogu, which I guess it's not that surprising. That one's at number 6, 177 million domestic, which, yeah, pretty brutal. Like compare that to like Star Wars The Force Awakens, which is like what, 900 something million, 800 something million domestically. Yeah. And this is the first Star Wars movie in 7 years, right? A hit show that people theoretically liked. And yeah, here we go. It kind of tanked.
Yeah.
Minions and Monsters, 145 million at number 7. And then Disclosure Day, 115 million at number 8. About what I expected. I don't know. I felt like some people had higher hopes for it, but I don't know. I don't think it's too surprising.
No, I think I was hoping it would do a little bit better, but it seems to have broken even, which is basically what I expected.
Yeah. At number 9 is Scary Movie. I think some people thought this would be closer to the middle, which nope, it's kind of sliding off of the top 10 at number 9, 108 million domestically. I think what hurt that movie was just like, okay, obviously these are critic-proof movies, but at a certain point, I think even people were like, I'll just wait to stream this. It's probably,
it made its money. Like if it grossed over 100 million, I'm pretty sure that makes it one of the highest, if not the highest grossing scary movie. But yeah, it's a flash in the pan sort of thing. It's like the old classic parody movies where it's like they make most of their money on the opening weekend, and then once they continue to lose cultural relevance, they just slip into obscurity basically. And until they decide to make Scary Movie, if they decide to make a 6th one,
they probably will for a quick buck, right?
Well, they might as well hit up on Obsession and Backrooms and stuff. I mean, they couldn't do it the last time.
Moana's at number 10, 91.9 million. I mean, yeah, just a big old miss for Disney. I mean, I don't know how much they spent on it. From what I've seen of like some of the production videos and stills, it looks pretty cheap. So I don't know if they put that much money into it anyway, but the marketing did have some juice behind it. So yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be a loss because they I'm sure they wanted this to be a Lilo and Stitch situation, which I mean, good luck with that.
I mean, Yeah, I feel like Lilo and Stitch, initially it was meant to be a Disney Plus exclusive, and then they put it in theaters and made $1 billion. This, however, like Mandalorian Grogu, just feels like, yeah, if I'm going to watch it, I'm going to watch it on Disney Plus. Like, I don't feel like going to the theater to see that.
I think the prevailing sentiment is like, why would I watch it?
Right.
The animated version is better from 10 years ago.
Right.
Like, and you see, like, the people post videos of, like, the side-by-side, and it's like, who would prefer the live action? Like, some grumpy anti-animation person? Well, why would they like Moana in the first place? Yeah, it makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. It's just like, can we make $1 billion off the same movie twice? Especially if it looks like a Super Bowl commercial instead of, a colorful animated film?
Right, and it's like, these other movies at least have like the 20-year cycle of nostalgia, which is like the usual thing. There's not a 10-year nostalgia cycle. It's not how it works. Anyway, Mortal Kombat 2 is at number 11. Wild that it's made more money than Supergirl. Supergirl's at number 12, 70 million. I mean, that is just a catastrophic failure. Catastrophic. 70.8 million. I mean, that's what they were hoping this thing would make in 2 weeks, not over a month. Like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was tracking for like 50 million in its opening for a little bit before they started bringing it down to 30. And then it just collapsed. And that's such a blow to the DC machine, right? Like, they got to be like looking at their accountants like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, it seems like there's probably a number of factors here going down to, superhero oversaturation and all that stuff. But yeah, at the end of the day, I feel like if the buzz was stronger, if the reviews were more enthusiastic, but it just seemed like the response all around was like, yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. And there wasn't a lot of interest in anyway. And a part of the reason I think Superman did so well is that there was genuine people like really enjoyed that film and we're really surprised and excited. And it's like, okay, it's not my dad's Superman. It's it's a new Superman, and then people with this one are just like, yeah, it's just as bad as the last Supergirl movie. And so people are just like, okay, I'm not going to go see that then.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people still have standards for like, okay, if we're going to watch a superhero movie in the theater, it can't just be these like bargain bin cookie cutter, like basic plots. And yeah, I do think sometimes this stuff really comes down to like studio skittishness in terms of like, well, you can't take too many risks. You can't do this kind of story. Just kind of do by the book. Sure, it's the safe route, but it's going to make its money. And then you could be a little bit weirder in the second movie. And I assume that's what they were thinking with this. And it just did not turn out well. Now, in terms of Odyssey, I mean, look at that. That is a movie that takes tons of risks, right? The whole setup here is, I was saying this in my review. To me, this feels like such an inevitable Christopher Nolan movie. Like, Odysseus is his most inevitable protagonist, right? Because this is yet another character from the Nolan kind of rubric, not just films he's directed, but films he's written, where it's about a person who essentially like helps to end, like an Oppenheimer, it helps to end one war and then maybe glimpses the possibility that he's doomed every war to come, right? So that's the kind of idea with Oppenheimer. Odysseus is like the prototype to that, right? And this movie, I don't know how much you know or how much you're read up on Homer's poem. I know a lot of people, did the explainers or like reread it in anticipation of like, oh yeah, it's been a while since I revisited. Like, I know a lot of people probably know the story from The Simpsons, to be honest. But there's a lot of like material to work from. And I think what's interesting is that Nolan kind of takes the time bending stuff of like, well, it doesn't really start at the beginning. It starts 20 years. It starts at the end, basically. And then it goes back and then it goes back again. Then it loops forward. I was like, yeah, that's why I think Nolan was probably drawn to this. It's like the original story. Like the story that kind of informs the entire Western canon of literature. And I think there's almost like an audacity. There is a risk to being like, I'm going to make that movie and I'm going to actually like have a take on the Odyssey that isn't just a remake, that isn't just sort of like, yeah, it's the Odyssey you read from Homer, basically replicated for modern audiences. Like, no, he's like, I'm gonna tell a story that I think is kind of interesting about this that's a bit different.
Audacity or Audacity?
Odysseus. Odysseus is played by Matt Damon here, and I want to start there, actually. What did you think of the Matt Damon performance? Did it work for you?
It did, yeah, and I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to feel about it. I like Matt Damon. I actually think he's a pretty compelling screen presence when he wants to be, but I always associate him with like sort of the middle budget film, and that's something that he's obviously kind of tried to carve a niche out for himself. He has a great little clip from Hot Ones where he talks about that and how that sort of film over the last 10 or 15 years has sort of died out. But
well, to be fair, it hasn't died out. It's just, it's in streaming now.
Sure. I mean, like, in terms of it being as profitable as it once was.
That was his point, is like you used to have like the DVD business kind of hold up like those mid-budget movies in the theater. Like even if it didn't make a lot of money in the theater, it was fine. The DVD business would basically keep those movies afloat. And now it's like a streaming model, and it's just not sustainable, basically, is his.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I was talking about this with my brother actually pretty recently because he watched the film. Yeah, I mean, he has always, to me, benefited from playing these sort of intelligent or intellectual men who are sort of embattled with some hidden or darkened or untapped thing. You see that with like Good Will Hunting. I just recently this year actually just watched The Talented Mr. Ripley for the first time, and I think that's his best performance. Like I think the complexity of that character, the way that he has to battle, as an intelligent but like darkened character, this sort of hidden sexuality, this hidden nature to him. And I feel like he's someone who's obviously has a real grounded kind of gravitas. And I think in a film like this, where, it actually starts with like in a time of, apparent magic or something along those lines, having a guy who is as grounded and honest and someone who feels like believably present in a big world like this does a lot to help it. And I think, I thought he did a really good job of kind of establishing this sort of moral quandary of identity and trying to find his sense of self at a time when he's caused unexpected moral and societal decay, and tries to go home and tries to figure out if there is a home for him or if there's a place in a land where he defies and has been defied by the gods. I thought it was a good show for him.
I want to read your Letterboxd review of this movie. I think it says everything. So you wrote on Letterboxd when you watched this, "My Odyssey is journeying to King of Prussia to see this movie in 70mm IMAX, discovering victory and beauty, then ruin," that's Philly in parentheticals, "and now struggling to decide if it's even worth venturing back home." Well, this received 9 likes, and I'm just curious, like, what?
I guess there's people
What did you mean by this?
So I finally did something I've been meaning to do for honestly decades, which is I've always been told about, like, here are the locations where you can see the movie Christopher Nolan made it. And it's like, there's always like, I mean, I always feel bad for people outside of the US, because in the US, there's probably like 15 locations, maybe 18. And then there are like 5 others and outside the US. And I've always wanted to take the road trip to see it in the optimal way, which is IMAX 70mm. And it just kind of worked out that I am not working at the theater because they're doing renovations. This is the first movie that was shot entirely in IMAX cameras. This movie, it just kind of came out at the right window, a time for me to finally just make that road trip and throw the money down and do it. And it's a long drive, but I'm really glad I did. I got to finally see one of his movies in 70mm IMAX, and it's just just really cool to get the optimal experience. At times it can be overwhelming, but it does feel truly transportive in a way that, most movies, even when they try to, transport the audience in some way or manner, it just feels like this movie, with its commitment to realism, to invisible CG, to its globe-trotting, to its grounded sense of morality, I just feel like it has real grit and great sense of world building, and seeing it in this big optimal way. It's just like, this is true cinema. And then you go outside and you see Phillies there, and you're just like, well, I could just go back and experience the magic of cinema over and over again, the way it's meant to be seen, but I guess I gotta go home.
Wow. So 70, well, I'm happy that you got to see this in 70. I was supposed to see it in 70mm IMAX at the AMC Metreon. That's the theater that I usually see these things, and they have one of the biggest IMAX screens in America. I think it's the 3rd biggest at this point, and unfortunately, we had to watch it in digital. It was still that IMAX screen, which was great, and that's how I saw Oppenheimer too, was the 70mm. However, apparently they had an issue with the print, and so they told us like the day before, maybe it was the day of, like, hey, sorry, like, understand if you have to change your plans, but we're not going to be able to show this in the 70. And I was sad because at that point it was close enough to the release date that I was like, well, there's no way I can watch the 70. Like, everything is sold out. Like, you can't, like, it's going to be a long time before I can actually see it in 70. And by then, I think, I mean, I could probably make it work at a different theater, but like you're saying, it's like, it's not quite the same because it's not going to be as big of an IMAX screen. But fortunately, I did see it in digital, and I have to say, I still thought it was fantastic in terms of like the visual detail and the sound quality and everything like that was still great in the digital. And it still had the right aspect ratio and all that stuff. I know people have been talking about how, it can be disappointing to see this in the standard, because this is, we haven't mentioned this yet, I guess, but this is the first feature-length film shot entirely with IMAX cameras. It really is a logistical feat. Like, to do this kind of thing requires a lot of problem solving, because as some of our listeners are probably aware, like these IMAX cameras, it's not just that they're huge and it's hard to like move them around. One of the big issues is they're freaking loud. Like if you watch any of the videos of like people shooting stuff, it's so loud and it's really hard to dampen the sound, but still capture like people talking, right? And it's hard to move the cameras at the same time. So that's why in a lot of IMAX films, when it changes the aspect ratio and does all that, it's usually because like, oh, this is a scene that's easier for us to kind of shoot and we can work around it. We don't have like a lot of audio going. It's maybe capturing an epic scale of something, but not necessarily, the thing itself. So I hats off to Nolan. He did a great job with this. I still think, and I'm curious if you agree or disagree, I still think that like there are some like glaring pacing flaws with this movie that a lot of people have pointed out in terms of like, well, they have to tell this like non-linear narrative in a very like hastily edited fashion because these cameras are so difficult. And so there is a little bit of a debate you can have of like, does that suit the movie? Like, does that suit the movie because it is such a half-dash kind of epic thing that sometimes you do have these weird cuts? Or does it hinder it because in the pursuit of doing this all IMAX feature, you're going to have these gaps in quality? So I'm curious where you land on that.
In terms of pacing and the style, I didn't really take that much issue with it. Also, it should be noted, if anyone's curious as to how these styles look and compare, there's a really great feature. It's either on the IMAX site or the movie's website. If you Google it for ratio comparisons, they have the trailer and you can see the different ways that like, if you like, they'll display the trailer as is, but you can shift through if you want to see what it looks like on 35 or what it looks like in normal presentation, what it looks like in Dolby, what it looks like in 70, but not IMAX, what it looks like 70 IMAX. Just if you want the comparison points to what we're talking about, that's a really good visual.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Just in case anyone's confused, because I know we're kind of getting a little bit into nitty gritty of the tech talk. But to answer your question, I feel like the only real tech stuff, I assume with the dialogue and stuff, they probably ADR'd a lot of the stuff, or I didn't know if it was that or if they had just advanced IMAX cameras in the last 10 or 20 years to actually be more.
They put them in like these special boxes to limit the sound. Yeah. And they just basically found ways to like limit the sound issues. So I'm sure some things were ADR'd, of course, but they didn't have to do it for like everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the wide shots, all the shots with like things looking big and massive, it looks immaculate and great. Where I know some of the issues were some of the closer, kind of more intimate shots. It just seemed like, I know some people have talked about this, like the focus puller, which is like the way that they can track with actual film, like how things are going to be depth perceived and like how to avoid things not looking blurry in the foreground or something. I noticed, especially in the end battle, even though it's a really cool scene, like I feel like the bulkiness of the cameras for such a fast, quick moving scene in such an intimate kind of close location might have been impacted by the IMAX cameras, because like certain things didn't look like they were properly focus pulled, or like it looked like some of the edits had to be a little choppy because they're such big cameras and it's like kind of hard to move them around in an organic way in such a kind of confined location. But outside of that, I didn't really take much issue with the presentation, nor did I find it to be exceptionally limiting, at least in this presentation. Outside of that,
yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was noticeable at times, but I was so immersed. It did take me a minute to get on this movie's wavelength, right? Like we start with Telemachus and Penelope, as the poem kind of does, where you start at the end and you go back from there. And I do remember like when it started, you get like a little bit of a cold open and then you're kind of dropped into the Ithaca, B plot basically of like you have the suitors and there's this tension around like the hospitality of the suitors who are basically at any moment anything can go wrong, and it's a really great like series of scenes that feel really tense. But at first, yeah, I was like, okay, how are they going to do this? I'm not sure if I'm totally bought in. This is such a great example though of one of those movies that it just gets better as it goes. Like I'm curious how it'll be rewatching it, because I have to say, like about 30 minutes in, I was sold. I was like, okay. And for a 2-hour, 46-minute movie, that was pretty early. But I was like, I am just eating this up. Like the visual splendor of it. I think some of the choices of like, okay, we're going to do all American accents. Again, they felt like hiccups where I was like, I don't know if I'm fully here. Like, I don't know if I'm in this like machine version of the Bronze Age, just because of like some of the aesthetic choices. And I'm not one of those people that's like, this has to be accurate. I don't think there's any way you can make this accurate. I don't think that exists. I think that the more historically authentic you try to make it, I think the more like obtuse this movie would get. You do have to make choices. You do have to find ways to tell the story in the best way for modern audiences. I think for the most part, Nolan nails it. I think that he kind of has this stage play mentality where he's like, I'll cast anybody, right? In order to sell the point of, for example, Helen of Troy is played by Lupita Nyong'o. And, traditionally Helen of Troy, because, things are so like the way that like whiteness kind of exists as a concept in our modern times, Helen of Troy is usually like a white woman. It's played by Diane Kruger and Troy from 2003, 2004. And so a lot of people were like, Lupita Nyong'o, like Helen of Troy should be, but there's this all this debate, right? Of like, she was hatched from an egg, like who cares? But I do think that there's like an interesting like point there that Nolan is making, which is like Helen of Troy was fought over. She doesn't look like everyone else. Like there aren't a lot of like African like ethnic people in this movie. So like the fact that she stands out in that way, I do think serves the movie. So like I feel like the casting decisions are really smart and really interesting in that context. But I don't know. I don't know if you struggled at all to get into this movie in a similar way, because I think it just took me a while to be like, this is the idea in his head. And once I was there. But it wasn't instant.
Well, as mentioned before, this is a time of apparent magic, and part of the magic is that people speak the way we do now.
Yeah,
somewhat.
Apparently,
or they all magically speak like Christopher Nolan characters. No, I think I saw a lot of people and I heard a lot of people complain about that when I think the last trailer for the Odyssey came out, and you got to hear more of the dialogue, and it was a little bit more modernized, I guess, than people were anticipating or hoping. I guess because I went into the movie knowing that, it didn't really bother me. I also wasn't really expecting it to be the classic poetic language. If anything, I would have been more taken aback, I think, if they had actually honored it with being more the classical Homer-esque dialogue. But yeah, I mean, there were only a few exceptions, I think, where it stood out. The most glaring, and I feel like it's almost meant to be sort of jarring in a comedic way, because I saw, and I could hear people laughing, was the one point when they were just like, feel free to add some stuff or make up some stuff or something, or it was just like so glaring, like it almost takes you out of it. It's so kind of randomly modern.
Yeah, it's like a little anachronistic, or more anachronistic than the rest of the movie. Because like, to your point, I think it mostly gets away with it, and there are times it doesn't, here and there.
Mm.
But yeah, like, it reminds me of like fantasy novels these days. Like if you read a lot of the stuff that comes out and becomes really popular, like Fourth Wing is an example of like a fantasy series that blew up a few years ago. It's like 3 books in now, and just the way people in that fantasy novel, which involves people who ride dragons, and it's more of like a fantasy context, but they talk like teenagers in 2023. Like they cuss and they have like slang, and it's very anachronistic. And I do wonder if that's part of it, where it's like that's kind of how you, I guess, like connect with the younger folks. But I guess that's not that new. Like we've been doing that for decades.
I mean, it's like that Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out. Like everyone there spoke like a Reddit form, but it's a comedy, so people accept it. Except for me, I thought it was stupid. But
what? How dare you?
We already had that discussion.
I know, and I don't understand
sucks. You. It would help if the movie was funny.
Well, yeah, it's hilarious. I think you must have gone to the wrong screening.
Yeah, well, I wish I was at your screening then, because that sounds like a better film. But no, I think... No, that's true. Yeah, no, I think it's just like one of those things where, because this movie is so deliberately and classically Nolan self-serious, people are taken aback by it because they expect it to be like, more serious and Greek and I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you just go in expecting that, it's fine. Also, part of the magic of films like this, and part of the reason people go to see these stories over and over again, is to see a new modernized take on it. Something that, kind of brings these classic stories down to new generations, and you make a few concessions doing that. And if they want to hear and read the original dialogue, there's the book that they can read in 10th grade English like I did. It's like, it's there if you want it. You can, I mean, maybe some folks are super purists about it. It didn't really bother me. If anything, it felt like it would have been more alienating, I guess, because they would have felt like the performers probably would have to work around the dialogue, or maybe have to, kind of go around the less naturalistic story dialogue that is happening here. I think for me, it's like the classic thing with Nolan is just that he is so exposition heavy that, like, I feel like the movie, even once you get past the first 30 minutes, You never really stop hearing exposition. You actually arguably get exposition until the last scene. And to me, I don't really mind it that much for the most part. I'm just like, whatever, that's the Nolan style. That's how movies with him and Inception and Tenet and all these things happen. I can see, though, some folks being bothered by that aspect of it. And that's, I think, an understandable critique. But I don't know. It's just like, that's his style at this point. I
think he did a better job with Oppenheimer, where I felt like he made the exposition in that more dramatic, and it felt a little bit more organic at times for me. I'd have to rewatch it.
Yeah,
but I thought that was a little bit better.
I don't think it's much different in Oppenheimer. I think it's just the fact that it's more kind of grandstanding and more people talking in very dramatic styles as opposed to this, which is a little bit more. It kind of wavers.
I just feel like
style.
The conversations in that movie are more charged, and it feels like they have a purpose beyond relaying information. So even, it's relaying information, but I feel like the context of a lot of the scenes, as I remember in Oppenheimer, it made more sense to me from scene to scene. But anyway, I do want to shout out, like I know this person, because I was mentioning the cinematography, and I did mention Hoyt van Hoytema, who of course has worked with Nolan and all of his films since Interstellar. But he's one of our best cinematographers. Obviously, I think lately he's mostly done movies with Nolan. I think the exception past while was Nope. But other than that, I just think that like it's undeniable to me that as a cinematographer, his visual language just suits Nolan really well. Because even when you do have the writing kind of lost in the weeds, I think so much gets communicated without exposition too. There's so much just like, there are so many visual cues, and a lot of the emotional storytelling just comes from how everything comes across. And I found so many of the scenes really impressive for that part, with very few exceptions. I thought that, the Cyclops scene, which that was probably the most important one. I think you have to nail that scene. It's the most popular one next to the siren song thing. And the way that they pulled it off, I mean, and that actually reaches to a broader point that I'm curious what you think about, which is like, one of the fun things about this movie has been how many conversations it's spurred with people around like making movies. Like, how do you pull stuff like this off? And like kind of getting back to the magic of like big screen storytelling and how you can make a Cyclops come to life without just slapping a bunch of like CGI stuff on it. Like, this is famously the movie that like broke Tom Holland's brain, where he said that like when he was making Brand New Day, he was like, hey guys, I just made a movie with Christopher Nolan. What are we doing here? Like, why are we doing it this way? Like, it's like, oh, because of money? Let's spend more money. Like, it'll be worth it. You'll make money because it'll look better, And that's kind of what I'm getting at with this, like, shift in the air of, like, well, if you want people to come into the theater, like, put a little bit of elbow grease in it again, right? Because this is the kind of stuff that, like, our parents, our grandparents, like, this is the stuff that people used to grow up with, like, that fascination around, like, how did they do that with, Raiders of the Lost Ark? How did they pull off this scene? How did they do this practically? I think that we got like a little bit of a resurgence of that in the 2010s with, I remember Star Wars: The Force Awakens. That was the big thing. It was like, oh, J.J. Abrams is actually like going back to basics, and it's not just CGI everywhere like it was with the prequels. And then, of course, eventually we get Mandalorian and Grogu. But you know what I mean? It's just like, we go through these phases.
I haven't watched Mandalorian Grogu, but, Grogu or whatever, it is a puppet. It's not CGI.
It does, yeah. I'll be a little bit fair to that movie. It does have some cool practical stuff in it, so I'll give Jon Favreau that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be a special place in my heart for practical and stop motion effects. I mean, this is a much different film, but earlier this year there was I Love Boosters, which is a film that has a lot of practical stop motion effects, and it's not that they look better than what CG would look, but it's a lot more fun, and it's a lot more individualistic, and it looks more from like the filmmaker's own inspiration than something that's just like CG gobbledygook. And like you said, I didn't see Supergirl, but like watching the trailers for that, I'm just like, this looks like gray CG slop. Like, it doesn't look like it's particularly influenced by any one filmmaker. It doesn't look like it's doing something that's inherently unique to any one particular style or tone. It looks like Craig Gillespie, as he usually does, is just trying to mimic a studio style and just kind of following orders to some respect. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I heard there was some conflicts between him and James Gunn, so maybe he wanted to put more individual things that didn't work out. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, as far as this movie is concerned, I think when it comes to the Cyclops scenes, I think the use of practical is twofold. I think part of it is that it is trying to pay homage to like the stop motion classical effects of like the original Class of Titans and Jason and the Argonauts and those movies where they had the little, chintzy looking special effects with the stop motions and all that. But it also is like I think Nolan has made it clear that he does use CGI, but it's usually invisible. And if it isn't, it's like there's no other way to do it. And he will go to extra lengths to make things look more real and practical as possible, but not, to detriment of the film. And I think he is someone who really does care about the particular look and style of his film. And I think that's one of the reasons why this movie is a big success, not only financially and critically, but just in terms of audience endearment, is just that it is undeniably Christopher Nolan's take on the Odyssey. It's a story that most people, directly or not, are familiar with and known, but he makes it his own, and it makes it something that is undeniably a film by Christopher Nolan. I think that's one of the major keys to its success, and I think it's something that really inspires people, especially younger people, when they see a film that's clearly from a filmmaker and not just content that's studio mandated, and you could see somebody is actually putting a lot of their own individual heart and soul and style into a particular film to make it their own.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to the Cyclops, the last Argonian scenes where they come face to face with those giants who kill like so many of them, right? A lot of that was practical because those are just literally like 7-foot people, and they put like doubles in who are much, much shorter, like 4 foot, whatever, in the armor. I think there's literally a shot. I used it for our review on thankgodformovies.com, but it's the shot where you see Odysseus in front of the giants. That's not Matt Damon, That's actually, I forget her name, but somebody they put in armor to like kind of show the scale, but that's real, right? And that's the thing, is like it's convincing and it makes you think, and it's like, what an interesting way you solve that problem. I will say, like the scene pretty close to this, right after this maybe, was with Cersei, Samantha Morton, who I think kind of just, for this is a movie full of like performances that are like quick but really memorable. And she does such a great job with the pig scene. And, a lot of people have been saying like, oh, what if Nolan did horror next? Because like this is a very horrifying scene. I mean, it is like, this is the scene. I remember watching this and thinking, oh, Will's going to like this because this is a bit unhinged.
Yeah. And the, I guess their version of the Hades, awakening the damned scene with the dead soldiers.
Yeah, I like
you
that
just
too.
see that was primarily with Elliot Page, and it was just like, all right, this is what we're talking. Those are obviously some of my favorite scenes of the film, just because it's like, all right, this is Nolan doing something totally different, and it's horror, and it's freaky, and it's weird. And yeah, I was really enjoying those scenes in particular. I think Samantha Morton might give the best performance in this film, which is to be expected to some degree. She's a great actress. If anything, she's underrated. And yeah, it was just really nice to see her get the time to shine. I understand why she's not in the movie more, but I think that's a great showcase for her. I hope it gets some consideration, at least for putting her in more big budget stuff or more prominent stuff. I guess she's been on The Walking Dead for a while, or was on The Walking Dead for a while or something. I didn't watch it, but
Who are you talking about again? I'm not sure I caught that.
Samantha Morton.
Oh, Morton. For some reason, I thought you were talking about Lupita Nyong'o, and I was like, wait, what?
No.
Oh, I think I just got my wires crossed. I was like, yes. Morton I've seen way more in television, but yeah, I agree with you completely there. I mean, this is such a great showcase. And yeah, I will say, a long movie. I did have a little bit of like a gripe with this movie about like some of the color I felt like was missing. I get some of it is gray because that's thematic or whatever, but there were times when I did want this kind of like paradise, like haunting paradise, kind of feel where it's the Mediterranean. I mean, it just at times everything was so gray and washed out. Like you mentioned, like the gray CGI slop of other movies. I'm like, yeah, I agree. But I mean, there were times when at least Supergirl did have some color, and there were times I wanted a little bit of that from this movie, at least a little bit more. There's so many scenes where it's just like these like dark rooms and this dark place and this kind of like gross, weird place. And I get it. It again, it's a thematic choice, but I didn't. It left me a little wanting, I guess, at times. The obvious exception would be like you go into Hades, like of course that's going to be this like dour kind of sickening sort of place. And I thought that was handled actually really well with like the way the shadows kind of worked and how dark everything looks and the blood. I mean, it's just that stuff worked for me plenty, but I had a casting gripe that I didn't want to forget. I thought Charlize Theron was miscast. That didn't work for me as Calypso. I don't know.
I thought she was fine. Was there someone you would have preferred in that role?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not looking to replace her. I just thought the performance I wasn't sold. There's a pivotal moment with her character, and it's like the stuff leading up to it I thought was fine, where she's just kind of like, here, eat this flower. But then they do have like this big reckoning, and I don't think it worked. I don't know what it was, but I feel like I didn't really buy that character the way that I bought so many of the others. Like by contrast, I think Anne Hathaway's Penelope was so
she's great.
like dynamic and like really like crucial, to the movie itself next to Damon. So
yeah, I mean,
not the end of the world or anything. Yeah, the end of the Bronze Age, maybe.
Well, maybe the end of the world. It definitely feels apocalyptic in some respects. Yeah, I mean, as far as the casting, I guess it's a good pivot. I didn't think anyone was bad here. I think there are some people who are better, or at least given a little bit more room to be unique and charismatic compared to others. I think a lot of the stand-up performances we mentioned already, but like Robert Pattinson was just, fun and conniving and all this stuff.
Yeah, I loved him in this.
He's just really getting the chance to kind of relish his freak era, and I'm all for it. Elliot Page, as you mentioned, I think he's not in the movie a lot, but he gets the most of it, especially in that Hades kind of scene. Hamish Patel, I believe, the guy from yesterday.
Himesh Patel. Yeah.
Himesh Patel,
and he's been in a lot of TV work. He's like kind of one of the secret weapons of this movie.
Yeah, I think he's good and honestly a little underrated. In this, I feel like he was also really good in Tenet, and I was happy to see him working with Nolan again. I mean, those are the ones that I just like, thinking back on the film, like those are the performances that really stand out to me. I think they're good performers who just like kind of just don't get as much to do, like Mia Goth and even Zendaya, I feel like doesn't really get a ton to do until like one pivotal scene towards the end. I totally forgot about one of my all-time favorite performances in this. After Samantha Morton, probably my second favorite is John Leguizamo. Yeah.
Oh man,
great.
what a Chad! I mean, he ate
so
that role up.
Yeah.
I love that Nolan gave him the opportunity to do this, because who else would have cast a Mexican actor to be in the Odyssey, right? And it works so well. It's it's weirdly convincing, right? And like, because he has to do a very complicated, nuanced performance, that has these kind of layers of like doubt and world weariness. And, that just the way he's positioned within the movie and kind of like spurs the plot along toward the end. I mean, I thought it was so well done.
Yeah, he's had a really kind of interesting kind of second career. I mean, like, early on, it's like the classic like Sid the Sloth or like Summer of Sam, or even going back to like The Pest or like, what's that movie? Superhero movie. He plays the clown in it. He like used to play these like broad comedic roles. And then I feel like in recent years, like with John Wick and stuff, he's been doing these kind of more quiet, subdued mentor type roles. And it's kind of led up to this where he's, so earnest and so emotionally devastated and just someone who's just like this kind of quiet, yearning character. And it feels very attuned to like what he's been working on, but also something that we just haven't seen from him and something we haven't seen in one of these kind of Nolan films. And I don't know, I feel like I'm sure there was a time where Nolan probably would have put Michael Caine in this role or something, but having an actor like John Leguizamo stand up and get a really just potentially Oscar-worthy supporting role it was just really endearing to see.
Another thing that stands out to me a lot, for sure, is, again, it's like what Nolan does with this story. And I mentioned this earlier, but the article I wrote about really what the story is about to me and how I perceive it, this idea of the Trojan horse being the Bronze Age atomic bomb, in terms of like how the movie positions Odysseus's guilt over the Trojan horse, violating Zeus's law, weaponizing hospitality in order to end a war similar to the atomic bomb, ending World War II. And the movie kind of being about like, there's this idea of like the sea peoples, right, who are like raiding settlements. And like the point of the movie is that, well, that's Odysseus and his crew are those people, right? This idea of like scapegoating in the middle of like a civilization collapse, scapegoating a bunch of foreigners when you yourself are the one, like you're the one who's destroying the trust within society. And I just thought that was such an interesting angle to take with the Odyssey. A very smart take, to interpret this like canon story as something that is beyond, I guess, the surface level, right? So the surface level is like, he's got to get home, but he's got all these problems. Ain't life tough? That's the kind of like surface reading of the Odyssey. But even back then, there were like very deep, interesting ideas around like these were tales about xenophobia. When these stories were being told hundreds of years after they were ostensibly supposed to have taken place, the idea was that like, oh, isn't it scary when you go to a different place? You're trying to get home, but like if you go to these different countries, you go to these different islands, you're going to come in contact with these like unfamiliar tribes, people you can't trust. Anything can happen. You have to be cunning, but it's all worth it if you can make it home. And it was kind of based off of like, again, xenophobia and paranoia. And for Nolan to invert that and kind of subvert that, it's not something I totally appreciated in my first viewing, but it is one of those things, like, the more I thought about this movie, the more I was like, you know what? I see what he's going for, and I like it. I like that that's where he went with it, because it is something that it's modern in a way that makes sense. It's modern in a way that I think is relevant and actually, like, fits the moment, that I think, like, your standard blockbuster Odyssey movie just couldn't be. I don't think there's hardly anyone else who could have made this movie. So I came away from the Odyssey really liking it the more I've thought about it. I think it's very well done. I actually, I mean, I haven't even asked you, Will. I mean, I get the sense you liked this movie, but what's, like, the extent of it? Like, if you had to rank it, I guess, in the Nolan filmography, are you ready to do that?
I don't know if I'm ready to rank it or not. It's hard to rank his films.
I don't think I am either. Yeah, it's always tough.
I mean, I do think, as you have sort of alluded to, I really appreciate how much, especially his more recent films, have sort of complemented one another and continued the themes that he's explored in nearly all of his films, but just kind of taking on a different genre or focus. You know, he's done the sci-fi with Interstellar, the war film with Dunkirk, the historical drama with Oppenheimer, and now we got the classic, Greek epic here with the Odyssey, and then even, you got time travel with Tenet before that, before Oppenheimer. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think he does these very cerebral stories that just look at the human mind, how they construct reality, how they choose to blank out reality, and how all that in some way or another has to deal with guilt, deservedly or not. And this movie, I just love that it really does feel like, he's tackling a lot of the things that he's done, like with Interstellar, the idea of a father kind of going on this extended mission and realizing they cannot live a normal life. That's like an interesting sort of, subtext for, I think, Nolan himself. Like, I think he recognizes as like a family man, even though he makes these movies with his wife, and, it's like, family endeavor. There's this recognition that he cannot live a normal existence as he makes these films. I think there's something really fascinating about him doing these films about, like, civilization and demise, and about one man kind of leading to doom with something that he felt was in the service of greatness, potentially, tying into the guilt that has been tied to the tragedy in Aurora with The Dark Knight Rises. And I think there's something to be said about, like, these last three films have all not only subsequently gone back in time, but dealt with characters, even when they deal with time travel, like Tenet, are these characters who cannot control their fates, are subject to these, particularly great but terrible things, and they have to kind of reckon with their consequences. I think these three films in particular have been really interesting examinations of that, and I think that's something that is going to make Tenet last longer, I think, in the public conscience, and maybe something that'll be... I've seen people being reevaluating it, and I think it's something that deserves its time in the sun a little bit more than its initial perception. But yeah, I mean, I just think, the fragility of memory, I think, that goes back to Memento, like all these things, truth and deception, that's Inception. It's like all these things, he just finds these focuses. And I think that's what makes him such an interesting, great filmmaker, is that he has these, core themes, and he can just mold these stories that are either classic or new and just make them individual to him and his interests. And I think that's why people are really responding to it. They're big, muscular films, but they're individualistic, and they carry that sense of trust and that sense of, like, he's gonna do the legwork, and he's gonna make something big and epic. He's not gonna sugarcoat it or cut corners or anything. And I think that's what, at the end of the day, I think what people are really responding to.
Well said. Well said. Well, let's. I guess we can close out with some reviews from our friends to kind of maybe round out what we skipped or missed. This one's from Ryan Oliver, friend of the show, who gave the movie 5 stars and a heart. He's watched it twice so far. Ryan wrote, "This is what happens when the world's biggest filmmaker gets a $250 million blank check to adapt the basis for every hero's journey into an IMAX-friendly spectacle. And make no mistake, said spectacle is immaculate. And of course, if you can see it in true IMAX, 70mm or digital, you should. But trust me, this will also play well in an IMAX screen as well." So that's like an IMAX that's not true IMAX. It's big, but it's not, it's not really the thing. And would be jaw-dropping if it were just that. But in addition, this is a perfect companion piece to Oppenheimer, a chilling account of the destruction that man is capable of and the impossibility of finding honor in your work or intelligence when said work or intelligence has led to a dark path that cannot be undone. There's more to it, but, goes on from there. Very, very well written. And that actually reminds me, Will, of something that I think it's so funny that I want to believe that this is in reaction to the Odyssey, is when Marvel dropped their Avengers Doomsday trailer, which I wrote a whole essay about on In Between Drafts, and how I'm just like flabbergasted by how like unbelievable the situation is for Marvel right now. But it's just so funny that at the end of that trailer, I don't know if you saw it, but they're hyping up this idea of it's infinity vision, right? I was like, I see. They're trying to do the popcorn bucket thing of like, that's what's going to get people to the theater. It's like something special.
Well,
you actually look into what infinity vision is. It's like the equivalent of like a Michelin star that Marvel decided, right?
Well, you know why they're doing that, right?
Well, my guess is that they think it's going to entice people or it's going to trick people into thinking the format is like part of the marketing. But
Well,
is there something else to it?
No, it's coming out. So the movie's coming out the same weekend or around the same time as Dune Part 3.
Right.
And they already secured the IMAX release for Dune Part 3. And they tried to get IMAX to push it or move Dune out by being like, well, we're Marvel. And IMAX is like, no, people want to see Dune. It's shot for IMAX. We don't care about this. And rather than having Marvel like back off or move their release date, they're just going to be like, well, we have Infinity Vision. And Infinity Vision's like this cool thing that's just for Marvel. And it's nothing.
It's nothing. It's literally nothing. It's just like,
nothing.
Are there stamp of approval on the theater quality, which means nothing. It's ridiculous. And to me, it's like the dumbest, most transparent bluff. They've got to push it back. They've got to push the movie back. It'll be a disaster.
They already have tickets on sale, right, for Avengers Doomsday?
They could still push it. I don't know if they have tickets out yet, but
I think they're too proud at this point.
That's ridiculous. Like, what a bunch of... And how is this not a summer release? Like, it makes no... I can't even deal with this. Okay, Kimber Myers, friend of the show, gave it 4.5 stars and a heart. No review, though. Let's see what else we have here. Isaac Feldberg, 4.5 stars. We of course know Isaac is usually he's a tougher critic on these things, on these types of films, but he wrote a pretty long one. I'll do the shorter version, but he wrote, "You Can't Go Home Again. A fantasy realized by a logician, a vision of conquest and consequence enacted by an uncompromising pragmatist, one in which gods and monsters merely reflect the ambitions and delusions of men lost in labyrinths of their own making. The Odyssey is the greatest story ever told, but in Nolan's hands, it is another emotionally driven puzzle of discipline, desire, and design. Here, he's questioning the identity of a lost hero grappling with the guilt and grief of all his past sacrifices, even as he endures the long journey toward a home he can no longer find comfort in, encountering the mythological and thinking his way through it with a master military strategist's mind, even as he displays reverence for the deities in his midst, the same ones he's defied." Yeah, that's something that Will, is so crucial too. I think Odysseus as a character he's supposed to be cunning and everything. I like how in this movie his cunning often is also a liability. It plays with this idea of like the information he withholds from his crew. I think Matt Damon sells a kind of like likable, like he's obviously a strong guy, but he's not the strongest warrior. The whole idea behind the bow, which they don't explain it in the movie, but like it's the reason he can put it together. It's not because he's stronger than everyone else. It's just he's smarter. He knows he designed it that way. Like he gamed the system. And I find the way that Damon like brings that out to be really compelling, because I think like in a lot of other roles, that kind of character wouldn't be as likable. But I think like he has this like affable sort of charm to him despite being flawed, maybe because he's flawed. That sure, it goes back to like Good Will Hunting. That's kind of the Matt Damon proposition. That's kind of what he's best at. So in that sense, I think he's really well cast. I think maybe in hindsight more so than like in the lead up, I'm like, yeah, he makes a lot of sense as Odysseus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really impressive and a credit to him that he's kind of maintained a sort of consistent screen image that complements him and he's been able to play into really well. I mean, I forgot to mention when I was talking about earlier, like the Bourne films are a really great vehicle for him to explore that, even with the character. With the amnesia, he has like this inherent smarts and kind of knows how to game the system and like play against what people don't know, including himself. Yeah, I think it's just, I think he knows his style. And I in the lead up to this film, I wasn't really sure of it, but watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this makes complete sense.
I was going to do two more here. One from Emma Sasek, Aunt Emma, who gave it 4.5 stars. She wrote, "A truly overwhelming film and feat in filmmaking. So many times I thought, holy cow, how did he do that? And there's no way this could get any crazier, but it constantly does. I thought this had a really nice blend of reality and fantasy, with everything coming together to show the weight of man's actions and regret. Obviously, Oppenheimer makes a great companion piece to this. The beginning part was the choppiest for me, with some really awkward edits and cuts, but then once we head to Odysseus' story, I locked in. So many standout sequences: the Trojan horse, the beginning of the war, Circe's feast, the Cyclops in the graveyard. And again, so many scenes where I couldn't believe the cinematography, like the choppy waters and inside the horse. Even when it's not all about the fantastical elements, there are so many great moments with Penelope, especially that screen door scene between her and the beggar. Robert Pattinson being a slimy guy is always a treat, and I thought Tom Holland carried his own really well in a cast full of heavyweights. Stellar cast, and each one delivers in their own way. What a dream for a director to have a fraction of these people in a film, let alone all of them. Can't wait to rewatch this again. And, I'll add to that. It's like, we haven't even talked about John Bernthal, and speaking of like heavyweights and like, I won't name names, but there was like a certain, film person, film reviewer person who was like, you could take John Bernthal out of this movie and like nothing would change. And I'm like, what? So much would change.
Right.
Like, I think they were talking about specifically the sequence where Tom goes to visit Menelaus and like what that adds to the film. I'm
right.
Like, it adds a lot. Like, it's really important, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and it builds on the legacy of Odysseus and how he's seen in the eyes of all these people and all stuff. But yeah, no, I'm a couple things. I'm surprised we haven't really talked about the Trojan horse scene much, and I thought it was really cool and it implemented, the
I thought Cobb and Cooper did that for us, to be honest.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they're always up to their schemes, but yeah, I thought it was a really good implementing of the ticking clock element that is so integral to so many of Nolan's films, and just having that build up to suspense and all that. And I got to see that scene Limax before Avatar 3, and I just remember watching that and being like, oh yeah, this is going to be a good film. Like, not that I wasn't sure of it before, but I was just like, okay, this is the proof in the pudding. And yeah, finally getting to see it in the film, in the context of the film, was a treat in its own right. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. As far as Tom Holland, we talked about it briefly, but I thought it was okay. I've seen some people nag on him. I think, it goes to show that like when he's in a real film, he does have his kind of weaknesses, but
I think it kind of works because like he's in a movie where he's supposed to be the least compelling, least charismatic person in the room.
Yeah.
So I think it actually kind of works in a funny way.
No, I get that. I think he did fine, but I also saw someone dismissively refer to it as like if you put Emilio Estevez and Ron, and that's just kind of the image that's been in my head with Tom Holland. So
very fair comparison, actually. You and I were talking about like in terms of the cinematography, like just the movie magic of like if you don't film this in a water tank, in Burbank, you actually take the time to make the ships. You do all that. They have that shot with the dolphins, like some actual real life dolphins showed up, and it makes it into the movie. And it's like you don't get happy accidents like that when everything is just manufactured and made with green screen and all of that, right? And it's like, yeah, it's a testament to like, yeah, audiences will show up if you put in the work, but obviously you have to do it right, and not everything is going to work, and that's the issue. That's the math that typically dooms a lot of these productions, especially these days.
And I think, and I could be mistaken, but I remember reading like a while back that the cave where the Cyclops is, and also shout out to Bill Irwin, who played the Cyclops.
Yeah.
He was great.
Polyphemus.
Yeah. I think that was like the first time that was ever shot on cameras, let alone like IMAX. And it's just really cool to see like an unexplored terrain and just this huge image on, like 70 millimeter IMAX, just like areas I feel like that have been totally untapped and very primal in a way. It's just like, yeah, if they green screen this, it'd be like, whatever, who cares?
Right. Exactly.
But like seeing it in a real location like that, it's just like, oh man, this is cool.
I saw somebody posted a video of like how Polyphemus was, working that livestock before the Odyssey, and it's just a shot of it's a montage of sheep detectives with like Hugh Jackman. I was like, oh, if only Hugh Jackman had played Cyclops and X-Men instead of Wolverine, this would be even funnier.
Yeah, I still need to see Sheep Detective, but I'm hearing almost unanimously good things, so I gotta check that out.
Yeah, that's going to be probably a drunk episode of Thank God for Movies. Okay, the Odyssey. Oh, yeah, we have one more review, actually, from Abigail Chessie, best friend of the show, former co-host. She gave it 3.5 stars and a heart. She said, okay, so imagine a renowned chef is making you the biggest steak you've ever seen. It's so big, in fact, that it takes 2 hours to cook. It's a really nice cut of meat, too. Something you've always been told is, all caps, great. Undeniably the best. After 2 hours, you get that steak, and it takes nearly an hour to finish. There is no denying that it's quality steak, but it tastes the same as a lot of other steaks you've had. In fact, you can think of many smaller, cheaper cuts of meat you've eaten that were just as flavorful, if not more so. You enjoy it, but you can't stop wondering why the steak needed to be so big, or take so long, or cost so much, especially when it tastes more or less the same as the last big expensive steak the chef made you. The Odyssey is that, but in movie form. What do you think? What do you think, Will? about this steak analogy. Should have been lamb, right? Because of the sheep.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like maybe Abby should get some better steak.
I mean, that's what she's saying. She's saying she had this steak, and she's like, you know what? I've had great steak, right?
Yeah.
And my takeaway is that I don't think the movie moved her emotionally, where I think she's like, okay, yeah, the craft is undeniable, but like, where is that missing ingredient? And I've seen this from a bunch of people, right? I've seen this from a bunch of people who've watched this, especially like, after the hype has kind of like, crescendoed and have been like, okay, but like, why isn't the movie really taking me to that extra level? There's so many people calling this a masterpiece. There's so many people saying this is like, one of the best movies of, years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So why isn't it hitting me in that way too? And obviously, who knows? It could be a number of things.
Yeah.
But I'll admit, it's not like the movie moved me that much. I wasn't like emotionally like floored or anything by this in terms of like, in fact, I think the ending, I was kind of let down. I think was like a bit of a cop-out, and I didn't love it. And I think that I still overlook a lot of that stuff because I think I was just so taken in, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of the verbose, hyperbolic reactions, and I wish I was on that same level. Like, I don't think it's quite, like, I'm not walking out of this the same way I did when I walked out of The Dark Knight, back in 2008. But I am walking out of this and being like, I'm just really glad that we are actually getting movies like this from a filmmaker, implementing his craft at the peak of his, like, financial powers and doing something that's undeniably his in a story that we all know, but can make his own. And yeah, I think for the shortcomings that we've mentioned and the few that we haven't, I just think it's really cool that we have a movie like this. I think that's why a lot of people are willing to overlook some of the flaws of the film that they may have been pointing out otherwise.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I think this will be a bunch of other people's Dark Knight, who were watching this when they were our age, because like Dark Knight came out when I was 17, so you must have been like 15, 14, whatever.
Probably, yeah.
And so, like, yeah, it's like that was an awakening, right? Of like hitting at the right moment for us at that age. And like, I'm sure people watching that were like, but Memento was like such a better steak,
Well, I mean, I was saying that too, but I was still like,
sure.
Holy moly, The Dark Knight, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's true. We all know Will Ashton was a bit of a movie critic with the juice box when he was 3. Anyway, I'm assuming you already know the Rotten Tomatoes, or we're a bit over time anyway, but did you already know it?
I don't, but I want to say shout out, and if you have seen the film or don't care about spoilers, be sure to check out John's review on thankgodformovies.com. It's quite good.
Yeah, thank you. It's a spoiler review. I wrote a spoiler review of the movie before most people watched it, but I think it paid off. I think people appreciated it once they did see the movie and it was ready for them. And yeah, so I go into way more detail, I think, like in terms of what I think the movie is doing thematically. But yeah, Rotten Tomatoes here, we have 438 reviews counted. That's a really high number. Letterboxd, I think this is already at 111 or something like that, and like the top 250 or whatever it is. But yeah, what's your Rotten Tomatoes score guess?
I'm going to say 95%.
So close. You're only 1 point off. Do you think it's 94 or 96?
94?
Yeah. Your cynical side wins again. Popcorn meter, audience score, whatever, is 97%.
Okay.
And the cinema score, I'm like kind of going by this fast. Cinema score, yeah, quick guess from you. What do you think?
Is it an A?
It's an A, perfect A. Not perfect, because A+ is supposed to be perfect or whatever, but I feel like that sounds about right. You're going to have like a few haters, but for the most part, people are going to be like, yeah, this thing was great. Like, definitely worth my time.
Listen, if I get an A, I'm happy. I mean, A+ is even better, but I'd be happy with an A.
We don't have too many things on the docket for next week. I mean, we are kind of recording this in the middle of it. We have Spider-Man coming up soon. I'm going to see that on Monday. But, that's coming out July 31st. So that might be our next review, unless we find something else in the meantime that's a little bit more off the beaten path.
We could do The Invite. I know you were kind of jonesing to see that. I would love to talk about Gail Daughtry and the Celebrity Sex Pass, but for some reason that's something that's not on your radar, even though it's a very John Negroni movie.
It's possible. Look, I mean, it's just in theaters right now, right? Or is it streaming?
It should be in theaters still, yeah. It's probably on its way out though. So
that's the thing. It's not. I don't think it's. I haven't seen it on the marquee, but for you, Ashton, I'll look into it. But as always, if you have your own suggestion, of course, you can always let us know.
There's also, and it's kind of gotten mixed reactions, but Her Private Hell, I think, just came out.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. So far the reviews have been pretty negative, mixed to negative at best. So a bit of a bummer because that does have some interesting talent behind it, but. The latest Neon feature, I believe. I think that's Neon, right?
Yeah, Nicholas Winding Refn.
All right, but that should do it for today's episode of Thank God for Movies. Thank you so much for listening. From the internet, California, I'm John Negroni.
Don't you mean John Negronius?
John Negronius.
And I
First
am
of his name.
Will Mandius Ashtionius.
Get out of there! We're in the wrong place entirely!
Bye, everybody.